All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tackling something we all face, unexpected transitions, whether that's at work or in your personal life, and we're going to look at this through two totally different philosophical lenses. I mean, think about it. When your world gets completely turned upside down, do you just quickly adapt to that new reality, or do you stop and question why the reality had to change in the first place? It's a super fascinating tension, so let's just break it down.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the cheese in the maze, then move into lessons in letting go. After that, we'll pivot to this really interesting idea called the maze in the mouse, and finally wrap things up with designing your own maze.
Okay, part one, the cheese and the maze. Let's lay down the foundational metaphor for life's big transitions.
We're actually using a Columbia Human Resources discussion guide to anchor our exploration today. And according to them, the very first question you've got to ask yourself is, what are you actually chasing? Honestly, before you can even begin to deal with life's disruptions, you have to define what's truly at stake for you personally. What's that one thing you're pouring all your time and energy into right now?
Now, understanding this really simple framework is absolutely crucial because it helps us map out our own real-world desires. In this classic allegory, the cheese obviously isn't just a snack, right? It represents anything you aspire to have. We're talking a successful career, money, a loving relationship, or maybe just peace of mind. The maze, on the flip side, well, that's the environment where you're searching for that cheese. It could be your workplace, your social circle, or even the whole industry you work in.
And this incredibly sticky metaphor? It comes from Dr. Spencer Johnson. And what's really wild about Dr. Johnson is he wasn't just an author. The guy was a medical doctor, a Harvard Business School fellow, and even the director of communications for Medtronic, the company that literally invented cardiac pacemakers. His iconic book, Who Moved My Cheese, basically took this super complex human psychology and just distilled it down into a simple fable about mice and little people running around a maze. And man, it struck a massive chord. We're talking over 28 million copies sold worldwide. It became an absolute staple in corporate training everywhere.
Moving right along to part two, lessons in letting go. Let's see how we're supposed to adapt to all this change.
So business leader Eric Ritter actually distills Dr. Johnson's survival lessons into what he calls these punchy little cheese bites. First up, you've got to notice the little changes early on, way before they snowball into big problems. Second, you have to push past that paralyzing fear of the unknown. Third, and this is a big one, you have to let go of the old cheese much quicker if you want to avoid going extinct. And finally, you actually need to visualize yourself enjoying that new cheese even before you find it. It kind of pulls you forward,
But, it's one thing to talk about embracing change. It's a whole different ballgame actually living it. To illustrate just how hard this adaptation really is, the Columbia HR Guide outlines this brilliant team-building exercise. Picture this. You divide into teams and start working on a group jigsaw puzzle. Everyone's getting comfortable, figuring out a strategy. Then, out of nowhere, ding! A bell rings, and you randomly shuffle one member from each team to a completely new group. Then you resume the puzzle. And you repeat the shuffling, over and over. It perfectly mirrors the exhausting reality of real-world disruption. It totally shatters group coherence, forces everyone to constantly readjust, and really just physically demonstrates exactly why change causes us so much anxiety.
But hold on a second. What if blindly adapting to every disruption the universe throws at you isn't actually the best strategy? That brings us to section 3, the maze and the mouse.
Now we get this incredibly sharp pivot from Harvard Business School professor Deepak Malhotra, and he boldly challenges the whole classic narrative. Honestly, Malhotra argues that the original Who Moved My Cheese message might actually be a little dangerous. Why? Because it basically promotes the idea that change is completely beyond our control. It essentially tells would-be innovators and leaders to just put their heads down, stop asking why things are happening, and blindly run around a maze that somebody else built for them.
So, to counter this, Malhotra wrote his own fable, cleverly titled I Moved Your Cheese. In this version, we meet 3 super adventurous mice named Max, Zed, and Big. And instead of just reacting to the fact that their cheese has been moved, these mice push the boundaries. They realize that real success in innovation and leadership usually means playing by your own rules. They stop just blindly reacting to someone else's changes and actually start asking the hard questions about the maze itself.
Which brings us to arguably the most profound insight of this entire explainer. At one point, one of Malhotra's mice has this epiphany. The problem isn't that the mouse is in the maze, but that the maze is in the mouse. Wow. He's arguing that our absolute biggest limitations, they aren't real physical walls.
They're actually the environmental pressures, the strict social norms, and the heavy expectations of other people that we've just internalized over the years. The world tells us how things have to be, and because we've swallowed that whole, we don't push back. We literally trap ourselves.
So let's put these two head-to-head because it's a super powerful contrast. On one side, you've got the original approach from Spencer Johnson, accepting the maze. It teaches us to survive. It's super practical. Anticipate change, manage your fear, adapt to new realities fast. But then on the other side, you've got Malhotra's challenger perspective, questioning the maze. This one empowers us to innovate. It says, hey, don't just adapt. Ask why the change was forced on you in the first place. Question the goals. Can you just reshape the environment entirely?
All right, final section, designing your own maze. Let's pull these two perspectives together into one holistic philosophy.
Academic professor Hrishikesh Upadhyay points out something pretty interesting. Management, as an actual university discipline, is barely a century old. And for the longest time, it was just hyper-focused on science, tools, and, hitting those quarterly profits. But a true philosophy of management? That requires us to step back. It asks us to look at the long-term consequences of change and personal development. We have to confront the actual root nature of our problems, instead of just endlessly treating the symptoms by running to the next piece of cheese.
So what this really boils down to is that a complete leader needs a dual toolkit. You kind of need both. For basic survival, yes, absolutely. You've got to anticipate and monitor those small changes, and you need to let go of what no longer works. But for real innovation, you have to question the rules and assumptions of your environment, and you need the courage to actually reconfigure the maze to your own liking.
I'm going to leave you with this provocative final thought to carry into your next big transition. When disruption hits, and trust me, it's going to hit, remember that you're not just some passive participant in someone else's experiment. You always have a choice in how you respond. So, take a hard look at your own life right now. Are you going to just keep chasing the cheese today, or are you finally going to change the maze entirely? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.